Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. Links right here in the description. You know the deal at this point. $2.99 per month. Click on that link. You'll bypass the $1 Apple upcharge. You can cancel at any time, so really very little risk. Less than a cup of coffee. You can basically vent with other Heat fans who are always venting, even in the middle of the night. 10 channels, including our draft and transaction channels, host updates. Our main thing chat is the main one. Other NBA stuff. We even do non-hoops on there. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. Also, subscribe to Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Just sign up. They're handing you $50. Go to prizepicks.com. Use the code FIVE. And yes, it is legal in the state of Florida, no matter what that book in Hollywood says. Have a good one. Now today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Down to Biscayne, kept the flow playing, got an all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and 5 Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. We've been pumping out the episodes lately, so make sure that you check them out. Our off-season series, internal, external. So we're doing an internal episode today and a bunch of external episodes, one on John Morant, one on Kevin Durant. We will do more. And also we did an episode Alex and I did on Jimmy Butler. And whether or not we look at the Heat's decision, not the trade, but their decision whether or not to extend him, whether or not we felt differently after Jimmy's advance to the second round, even if the stats are very similar to what he had in Miami. But today we're going to talk about somebody they got for Jimmy Butler, Davion Mitchell, who's a restricted free agent after this season. And honestly, he was the prize of that trade for the Heat. He played the best of the three guys that they got. Kyle Anderson contributed, maybe more than some expected. Andrew Wiggins had his moments, although none in the postseason, and he was injured a lot. And Davion Mitchell really stood out. I mean, when the Heat put up anything about Davion Mitchell, every post afterwards was keep him, keep him, keep him, keep him, keep him. Universal love for this particular player because of his defense, because of his effort. There's a personality there, and the offense was much better than advertised. And again, this is a former lottery pick, so this is not a player without potential. He is a restricted free agent at the end of the season. We are fully expecting the Heat to extend a qualifying offer to him, which gives him them the right to match any offer that's out there. One thing that Greg Sylvander mentioned on the Kevin Durant podcast is if they went after someone like Durant, they might be a little bit more limited in terms of what they can match with Davion. But again, so many things out there right now that it's hard to know exactly what position they'll be in, except Brady, that I expect. I don't expect a huge offer, and from another team, and a couple of reasons for that. One is teams are positioning for 2026, but also the book's out now that pretty much after you leave the Heat, if you're a developmental player, which Davion, even as a former first-round pick, kind of was, you don't really get the same production outside of the Miami system. We've seen that with Caleb Martin now, Gabe Vincent, some of that's injury-related, guys like Rodney Magruder, on and on and on, Tyler Johnson, etc. That you just don't get the production outside. Max Strus is kind of the one guy who fell into a good situation and has produced close to what he produced in Miami, pretty similar. But in most cases, it doesn't happen. We'll just start here before we get into what Davion can be and how they should proceed and kind of where this goes. Your feeling on this, and you've stated before, you keep Davion Mitchell, right?
100%. If you have the ability to, which I do believe, I've said before, you mentioned the qualifying offer, I think they're going to be in range where they will be able to keep him. I mentioned before, like the year that Gabe was coming off, I keep using him as kind of that baseline, but like the year he was coming off and the number he got, I don't expect Davion to get more than what Gabe got, which was, if I'm not mistaken, around like 9 million, I think, a year. It was something around that range. So I think 100% you do keep him. You mentioned about other teams in the book being out. It's funny because I feel like Max is the exception, because when you're just like a specialist that could step into a role, like a specific thing, it makes sense that a guy could step out and specifically to another good team. And that's the other part of this, why it makes sense. So number one, you have to be good at one specific thing and be able to fit a role on a good team. So that limits about half the league, 3/4 of the league of trying to go after Davion Mitchell. It just doesn't make sense for most teams. So it leaves you with a lot of the good teams, and a lot of the good teams, it feels like at this stage, are not going to have a lot of cap space. So it kind of puts kind of the ball back to Miami's court. And I do believe he wants to be here. And I do believe Miami wants him back, but it just comes with kind of what we talked about. I feel like the last time we did a podcast together, we were talking about it's more so the guys around Davion, where you could put Davion in the right role with Miami. But with that aside, no matter what case that ends up being, you keep that guy. You keep your energy guy. You keep the guy that had a career year offensively, that just shot the ball extremely well, that played with such energy. That you mentioned, like, being the prized possession of that trade. He was the only guy that like had moments in a Heat jersey, like, where, let's say if the three guys that were put in that trade were gone tomorrow and weren't in a Heat jersey anymore, he's probably the only guy that you're like, you could specifically point out moments like that playing game and stuff. And it's not a shot at the other guy. I mean, Kyle Anderson hitting 2 of those like weird threes in the corner in the playing game, you could bring up. Wiggins having a couple regular season moments, but they're just so limited. That Davion, it felt like it was happening so consistently in such a short span of time. And to be honest, he's the only one that really did anything in the playoff setting, that he stepped up and elevated his game in that setting. So just as a whole, it just makes sense to bring him back. I just think they have to get him at the right number.
We'll go to all the total numbers in a second, but it was pretty much every game he was giving you 10 to 12 points and 5 to 8 assists and making his threes. And also, you mentioned making big shots down the stretch, not afraid to take those shots. And he made some, and you got to give him credit for that. Shane Battier told me something once, and it's something that you hit on. He's like, I'm only useful on a good team. Like, I'm only useful on a good team. You say, you put me on a bad team, and you don't want me there, because then I got to dribble. I got to do all these other things. He's like, but you plug me in a good team, like, I'll figure out where I fit, and I'll make things easier for other guys in a variety of ways. Shane did that defensively, but also with his shooting, obviously a different position than Davion. But Davion is that kind of player. Like, I don't see him having value on a bad team. I don't know what the point would be. But on a good team, yes. Now, the question is whether he's a starting point guard on a good team. I'm not sure about that. But he played, he's playing 37 minutes regularly for the Heat off the bench. So it doesn't really matter if he starts or not. I think for them, ideally, if they had a creator playing next to Hero, like a true creator, someone that had to be accounted for offensively consistently, then Davion Mitchell as your third guard would be ideal. But we'll have to see if the Heat can get that kind of player. Let me go through some of the numbers here just to compare. He actually averaged more points as a rookie with Sacramento, but again, bad team. So he started 19 games there, and he averaged 11.5 points. This year with Miami, once he got to Miami, and he was with Toronto for 44 games, he started half of them. That was not a good team this year. He averaged 6.3 points and 4.6 assists. He came to Miami. He averaged 10.3 points, 5.3 assists, 1.7 turnovers, so pretty close to a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which you'll certainly take. Obviously made Rozier completely, shelved Rozier completely when he came, because the differences were so stark. But the biggest thing, and again, he started 15 games in the regular season, played 30 total, averaged 32 minutes. And he was averaging 25 in Toronto. The year before, he averages 15 in Sacramento. His career kind of stalled in Sacramento. He had the first season where he averaged 11.5 points. But as that team got better, he played fewer minutes, even though he played a lot of games. But here's the big thing, and this is kind of because the defense we're going to talk about, and we'll get to that on the other side of this. But the shooting splits, 7.7 attempts, 50.4%. That included 3.1 attempts per game from three, 45%, 44.7. And he shot 70% from the line. Not his strength, doesn't get there a lot. but the shooting was excellent. Now, I guess I'm just trying to figure out. We've talked about this before, but as you decide how to go forward with him, like, is the form there? Like, when I watched him shoot, I really couldn't figure out why he'd been a bad shooter before. Sometimes some guys it's really obvious.
Yeah, there's not like a true hitch in the jumper or the base or anything. Like he has a wide base that there's fluidity to it. He gets off his feet, which I think is important. Like he's not like a flat-footed shooter. Like there's all the things there. I just think number one, when I talk about like thriving on a good team, like when you're playing in Sacramento, like they're not helping off as much because there's nobody to help on the off on two, if that makes sense. Like there's not somebody that they're like helping off Davion so they could overly help on this guy or Toronto as well. Like, yes, maybe Scotty or different guys, but like to the level of that was happening with Miami, where he's having total open threes. Like he had such a rhythm early in his Heat tenure where there was so many open looks. And even toward the end of it, like, let's be honest, like even in the playoffs and everything, the scouting report never really shifted. They weren't like, okay, well, we need to fly out at Davion Mitchell. Across the board, he had decent looks and he just continued to kind of force them himself. I think, honestly, more than the shooting, I know the shooting's important. 45% from three is insane. Like that in itself is crazy. But he did it for himself because of the fact he was such a great finisher. And that was, I keep going back to that, as that was kind of the number one thing that stood out to me was like his physicality on his drives, the way he could kind of just bully anybody that was in front of him, put his shoulder into their chest, and he has the ability to play off that. Usually when you see like those like football player type players that come in and just throw their body around and try to finish around the rim, they're not great finishers. He has such great finesse around there and such great control. And he was just a really good finisher. I was just looking at some of the numbers a second ago. Less than 10 feet from the basket, he ended up shooting 56% on a little over 3 attempts a game. That's crazy, especially for a guy. He doesn't settle for a lot of those like in between floaters or those like weird shots in between. He is just straight threes and layups, and he'll occasionally take like a bailout step back mid range that he has the ability to hit sometimes. But like it's very under control offensive game, and I think that's what just completely stands out. But to answer your question, I don't really see a problem with the form, and I think what stands out even more is sometimes you'll see like with shooters like himself, you're either like a spot up shooter or a pull up shooter. You're not really both. You look at some of the numbers from the season, the regular season, 39% on catch and shoot threes and 41% on pull up threes. And he had 1 attempt a game on pull ups and 2 attempts a game on catch and shoot. But that type of split that you're kind of pretty leveled on either way of shooting. And yes, they're probably both decently open looks no matter what. But that's important too, because it just shows a little bit of the versatility with his shot as well. So, yeah, he was a bit of a surprise offensively. And I don't really see, I mean, I guess the question for you is like, do you see a case where there's going to be natural regression, right? Like he's not going to be a 45% from three shooter moving forward. So there's going to be natural regression, but does it matter? Like if he dips down to 38%, he's still a functional player that's going to be closing a lot of games.
Yeah, I think as long as he's in that 35 to 38% range from three, I think you're okay. The thing that impressed me the most about not just the finishing, which is I think one of the huge things that distinguished him from Rozier, and their idea in training camp, it's funny, Davion executed it, which was threes and layups. Rozier couldn't execute it. Davion executed it. So credit to him for that. But the biggest thing that got me was he was able to consistently get a foot in the paint. It's not just the finishing; it's the opening, how he would get in there and then make good decisions when he got in there. For the most part, there were a couple of games that it got a little wonky, but like for the most part, he'd get in the paint and then know what to do. We even saw Kyle Lowry towards the end with Miami, who's a borderline Hall of Fame player. And he would often get in the paint, not know where to go, and just stand there and just sort of wheel around. Davion made quicker decisions than Kyle Lowry when he got in the paint. So I give him credit for that. I do think there's more growth in sort of the nuances of his game. Do I think he'll ever be a consistent 15 plus point scorer? No, I don't see it at his size. I think if you got from him in his minutes, if you got the equivalent of it, again, 10 to 12 points a game, but making the big shots, more of a Derek Fisher type role, I guess, to go back a little bit. Although I think he's a better defender than Fisher even ever was. But I think if you get that kind of player, I mean, look, Mario Chalmers made a living for a long time in the NBA. I think Mario had more scoring chops than Davion has. But, Mario was more of a play the passing lanes type defender. He was pretty good at the point of attack. but he wasn't elite at the point of attack. Mario will get mad at me for saying that, but he was better at the steals, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes Dwayne would get on him for gambling. Davion is just sound in all ways. And on the other side of this, I want to get to where you go defensively with him. So we're going to bring back a segment that we had during the regular season, and it was called Defending the House. And this is from our friends over at Cousins Moving. And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The Real Estate Shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house? Well, Davion did, but I want to get into a little bit more specifics on this because we've talked about the combination of him and Tyler and kind of where that goes. We've talked about Davion blowing up the screens and just not allowing himself to be bullied. I guess I asked this question, and we don't need to get into a whole bunch of depth on this because then we've covered it so much. But he's small, right? He's small. He's 6 feet. Okay. The league is trending bigger. They're trending bigger in the front court. The Heat have tried to match that with with Ware and Bam. We don't know who's going to play the 3 next year. It could be Wiggins. Obviously, Tyler's not the biggest 2 in the league in terms of if that's the position he's playing in terms of, in terms of his wingspan and all that kind of stuff. We know about the limitations Tyler has defensively. I guess with Davion, are you? He's such a good defender, but he's short. Okay, are you comfortable with him being your best backcourt defender going forward? He's built like a running back. He really is. You talk about it. Are you comfortable with that?
I am when you have Bam Adebayo on your team. When you have the versatility that you have, Davion can be such a dog in the backcourt, be that good of a defender, but he's still not the best defender on the team that isn't forced to play that style. It just works and it just makes sense. I think specifically you're looking at a lot of these teams, whether it's Houston or Detroit or some of these teams I've lost, recently, but they've had this versatility defensively, the Thompson twins, or they go to these big lineups and they're able to kind of guard the point of attack, but in a lengthier fashion. That's always going to be a needed quality on your team. Anybody's going to want that, but that's not easy to come by. That's not easy to find when you're talking about that level of versatility. The thing is with that, let's just use the Thompson twins as an example. They're just, these out of your mind, point of attack defenders that are lengthy. They're not great shooters from the outside. You got to play both sides this season where you had one of the best point of attack defenders in the league also shoot 45% from 3 and gave you something offensively where you would think you'd have more offense or more lineup versatility than ever over the last few seasons for Miami. But obviously they just didn't have the right guys around it to really make it work and make a push. But obviously I do trust that. I think Davion's also a guy, even though he's short, if you're going to have a smaller defender, that's a good, some of these guys in the past are cool, known as you mentioned, the steal type defenders where they're just getting the passing to do that. He's not like that. As you mentioned, he is a running back. He is a physical guy. I do trust him to size up on a lot of these wings. We saw him do it. yes, he's going to be, they are going to have a shot over the top of him if they fade away. But I think Miami and a lot of states are going to allow those fadeaway jumpers from wings if Davion is holding them to that. I think he's that good of a defender to do that. He could play so many different styles as we've seen with the zones, with the press, with the man. I don't think anything else matters from defensively. Just watching him get around a screen and force 3 moving screens a game in itself should warrant a new contract this upcoming season for the Heat. They haven't had a guy like that be able to get through screens, get around them, be able to go over and recover and not get lost in the background. All that stuff matters. He is just a different level of defender that we've seen, in that backcourt in a long time. So I don't really care about the length. They're building their roster right now around Bam and Ware, as you said. they should focus on that core being your lengthy piece in look at Cleveland. I mean, they're a perfect example, right? I mean, I know that they're not at the level of those guys. I mean, Davion's not a Garland scorer. But like you're talking about kind of a front court that's built this system around, rebounding, defense, forcing things into the lane. And it hasn't really mattered. Like they're able to get around that, non-length in the backcourt. Even on their bench, they don't really have. I mean, Ty Jerome's coming in, Sam Merrill's coming in. Like it's a decent base that it can work if you have the right guys around it. And that's why when you compare Davion to Chalmers, it's like the difference is who was around Chalmers compared to who's around Davion right now.
Right.
Like it makes Davion is the perfect complementary piece to a good team. So if Miami could figure that out and get that, back to a certain level, you need Davion on your roster even more so.
Okay, so that's the final question here, and I'll get to my answer on this after yours. Everything when it comes to in life, right, or in sports, it comes down to how desperately do you need something, right? Okay, can you live without something or can't you? So I'll just ask this: the Heat are going to make these transactions. We don't know whether they're going to push forward for Durant yet, or whether they're going to pull back a little bit, whether they're going to stay about where they are. But I'll just pose this question to you: how devastating a loss would it be for the Heat, especially after he was kind of the prize of the Jimmy trade, as it turned out, if they did not re-sign him this offseason?
If that was the case, I would say enough with these pipe dreams of Kevin Durant's and big stars that we keep talking about. It's time to go, youthful rebuild draft and everything else that we talked about as the other option. We keep saying, pick a side. Either you're going to have to, go all in for the guy or kind of get that soft reset started. If you're losing Davion because of that, and it would be tough to really see him go because I don't think it's not like, when Max got that money, it was like, well, they were never paying Max that. This would be a loss where you say, well, that was reasonable. That was a reasonable price to get him back on. So if that's the case and you're losing out on him just for like, just a few dollars here, it's definitely would be time to kind of lean in the direction of youth, kind of go a little bit south as a franchise for a couple of years and kind of rebuild. But I don't see that being the case. I mean, I really it would. This is one of those. I mean, now the more I say this, he's definitely going to walk. Or if you say that, he's definitely. But
we're jinxing it.
You're 100% jinxing it. But it is hard for me to see that happening. It just is. I just like what. Before we get to your answer, like what kind of do you even see like throwing him an offer? Like I'm looking at some of these teams, like even like a lot of the top teams, we're saying a good team that would throw him an offer. I don't even really see being realistic for number one, cap space reasons, and two, fit reasons. Like there's a lot of these teams that already have their backcourts made out and they have defensive guys. Like I was looking like Indiana, they already have their guys like TJ McConnell and these like if you go on the line, there's a lot of he'd probably end up having to go to a mid to weak team, which is kind of where Miami is right now. And I don't see a mid to weak team throwing a ton of money at Davion Mitchell. So to answer your question, it would be devastating because I don't think it would be out of their range.
Here's where I'm at with it. It's crazy to say that losing Davion Mitchell would be devastating, but I especially considering this was a player who really was having trouble finding a home. But I do think with where the fan base is right now, and this was a popular player, I think it would be a blow in that regard. I do think it's a blow on the court because obviously he's a player. They've looked for a point of attack defender for a long time. The Gabe was kind of it. Davion is better at it, and that's something that you need in today's NBA. I don't think he's going to get an offer from someone else that is way out of range. They will pay their own guys. We saw they tried to overpay Caleb Martin, right? Worked out that they didn't. So I think he's coming back. But I do think, okay, and look, if you're getting a superstar and Davion is sacrificed, then I get it, and fans will get over that too. But if you're not, and you've added this piece in the Jimmy trade, they got to figure out a way to get this done. And I feel like there is going to be an offer made at the beginning that will be commensurate with what he can provide for them. And I just don't think that there's going to be a team out there that's going to jump in. Again, I don't want to jinx it either because you just never know how these things are going to play out. He did not seem committal in his exit interview. He seemed open to whatever, but I know that he liked it. He was also never are, but also they were coming off losing by 92 points in 2 games. I mean, everybody is going to start to have some second thoughts about stuff, but this is a place that fits for him. I think if he's like your 7th best player on the team, like you're in pretty good shape, which is probably about where he should fit as like your first guard off the bench. So we'll see where this plays out, but I do think he'll be back, and I do think it should be a priority to bring him back, and I think it is. So I don't think we're going to diverge much. All right, many podcasts to come in our off-season series. One guy I want to talk about in an upcoming one with you, Brady, is Jovic. So we'll get to that one here over the next week or so. And again, extending him, I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll talk about kind of what the possibilities are there. Thanks to our sponsors. Again, realestateshopfl.com, prize picks, bang that code, FIVE.